Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Quillen with the Chicago Tribune, and on behalf of SABEW, welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar on how to shoot video for business stories. Mitch Masilun is here, and he's going to be leading today's session. Mitch is an Arkansas-based editorial photographer, a multimedia specialist, and an educator, and he is currently a photojournalist at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette in Little Rock. Mitch has a presentation that he has put together and that he's going to be walking us through, but he will be accepting questions along the way. To ask a question, we invite you to submit it using the Q&A tool on this Zoom platform. If you're unable to access that, or if you dialed in by phone today, you can feel free to email the question to sabew@sabew.org, and we'll try to get the question to Mitch that way. With that, I will hand things over to Mitch. Welcome, Mitch.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everybody out there in online world. We'll just go ahead and kind of get right into this and start the program. So that way, if we have any questions during or after, we can get to those as well, because it'll be a pretty tight program. So yeah, we're going to talk about shooting video. Before we even start, I'm going to jump screens real quick. If you'd like to know, this video is called Where the Hell is Matt? It was made in 2008. But I just wanted to start out with something a little light, a little fun, something to get you going and see. So go ahead and just watch this for about 2 minutes, and then we'll continue after that. Audio is not that great, so you have to listen really closely. All right, we're not going to listen to or actually watch the whole thing for right now because we just don't have time. But we'll talk about certain parts of that video once I get to it later on. So let's go ahead and get to an overview about the program. And like I said, I'll talk about the video a little bit later. We'll get into some assumptions about you folks taking this webinar, and then we'll get into what makes good and bad video. And we'll kind of go over things about what you can do before, during, and after your shoot. And then we'll get into some things for apps and gear that you can do to make your video and audio better. Then at the very end, we'll get into a little bit of editing and any questions you folks might have. So as I move on to the next slide, assuming there's no questions, some of the assumptions for taking this webinar. Okay, the video you're going to be doing is going to be a secondary piece to you writing your story. Okay, your written story is the main focus, is what you guys do and what you've trained for your whole lives, assuming or something to that effect. But that's going to be the most important thing. You're going to supplement that video, or sorry, that's written story, with some video and maybe some photos as well. Okay? For the most part, you're going to be limited on time and budget. You're going to be doing this video probably during the interview and some minutes before and after. You're not going to have much time afterwards, and your budget is going to be nil, if not fairly minuscule, on what you can buy to make your video better. Let's be honest, probably most of you don't really want to do it. Okay, it's something that you have to do to add value, to add worth. And they're going to pay you for the story, but they want you to be three things: writer, photographer, and videographer, for the same basic rate. That's a reality, or I should say, a reality of today's world. I'm going back for a master's degree in mass comm, and I'm learning how to write as well because people want more content for the same amount, if not less. But hopefully, the more you do it, just like with writing, the more you practice it, it becomes a lot easier to do. And hopefully, you'll kind of enjoy it eventually once you get over that little learning curve. You're most likely going to be doing it on a mobile device. You're not going to have the time or the money or the expense to go buy a big DSLR. If you do have one, there's a couple of other things I can give you that will kind of help. Most of the editing tips are pretty general. You can apply them to those bigger cameras, but most of the time this will be on a smartphone or a mobile device, and that's going to be the extent of where you're going to be doing your videoing and your editing. It's most likely a profile on a person or a report type piece on industry trends, current numbers, something happens in the news as far as with one of the big companies. So that's what the aspects is we're going to be covering during this webinar. I'll try to make it a step-by-step guide. I'm going to compress this into PDF so it'll be smaller, and I'll send it to Amy. And so that way, if you guys want to reference later on, this is something you can kind of go just slide by slide really quickly before you have to do a video shoot. So you can say, oh, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. And, kind of walk you through the exact steps of, doing, so that way you won't forget anything and it's something you can easily reference afterwards. Next slide. Any questions? Not yet? Okay. We're going to get a little bit into what makes a good and a bad video. Okay. The content or the story is still king. This does not change. Whether you're writing, you're taking photographs, you're doing video, the story, your main focus, either your subject or the idea, is going to be king. If you look at the Matt video, you can see that there wasn't much as far as audio except for music, but the content was very simple, very straightforward. It was just a dude dancing in different parts of the globe. There's nothing else that was really done with that video. All the shots were done the same way. The cuts were done kind of on the beats of the music. That's one thing you can do if you don't have a lot of narration, is you can cut on the beats of the music. But the content or the story of Matt is fairly straightforward and simple. I mean, there was nothing. I think when he was shooting it, he had I think $150 camera. And the shots were very straightforward, all the same type of shots, but the content of the story of Matt, was fairly simple, and it was a powerful message that he was getting across. Audio is more important than video, and I have a sample that will take you through that in a little bit. If you can see during the Matt video as well, there was some bouncy, some jittery, some low quality video, but for the most part, you kind of forgave that because he had a good song and a good story. So you're able to overlook the bad video. So in a lot of ways, audio is going to be more important. Obviously, you want to get both good audio and good video, but if you had to make a decision for some reason, you'd want to focus on audio more than video. Editing, okay, like audio, is a lot of times more important than video as well. Now, even though they call it video or videography or shooting video, you're starting to see a trend where the audio and the editing sometimes can be more important than the video. Good editing can make a bad video become, I wouldn't say good, but maybe not so bad. It can also cover up a lot of mistakes that you might do or you start out with when you're shooting videos. So editing a lot of the times is more important than video. Video is proactive, and the best thing I can compare this to is writing, I would say, is similar to like photography or photojournalism, where it's reactive. You're there, you're in a situation, you're kind of reacting to the things around you, whatever's going on, the person who's talking, all the little subtle things that are going on in the office or at a factory, and you're trying to absorb that and translate that for your audience. So you might pick up on little minute details of clicking of a fax machine, how a person maybe holds a pen or twiddles with paper clips, and you're trying to translate that through words to give your reader a better visual story or idea of what's going on. Video is kind of the opposite of that. To get good video, you almost have to go out and be you have to make it a production. You have to go out and say, okay, we need to get this, we need to get this, we need to get this. A lot of the times you'll see with good video, people will storyboard beforehand. So you'll have an idea of kind of what you want to do beforehand, and you have to go out and get it rather than let things happen. Because if they let things happen, a lot of the times with video, because you're worried about setting it up and get everything right, you might actually miss what actually is going to happen. You'll see if you're out, depending on what you do, but if you're out, on a press conference, you'll see a lot of video people do this. And I thought it's kind of unethical a little bit, but after talking to a lot of TV guys, it's like, oh, you can go ahead and just, cut that ribbon again, or cut a different section, or, walk past the building again so they can get a better angle or better shot. To me, that's kind of cheating, but once you realize how important getting that solid, good image is for your video, then you can kind of see, as long as you're not changing the content, again, of the video, then it's okay to kind of move things around and create things and actively make your video rather than react to what's going on around. Please, no vertical video, okay? It just don't do it. I put it in here twice because it's just horrible to do. You don't watch TV on a vertical TV. That's the easy example I can say why you don't shoot vertical video. It's easier just to hold the phone, and sometimes if you're in a rush, that might be all you get. But just take the time to rotate it and hold it with two hands if you can. Or there's a bunch of gear I also go on later on that'll help you hold your phone a little bit easier in the horizontal position. But please try to avoid vertical video. It just looks amateurish and it looks bad. That's all I will say. Anything before I go on?
I don't think there are any questions yet. To our listeners, you can ask questions using the chat function at the bottom of the screen. So feel free to send along any questions that you have as we go along, but none yet that I can see, Mitch.
Okay. So I'm gonna go into this next one real quick, and this is a good example of audio versus video, and if you have to make the decision. Again, the way Zoom doing with my sharing my screen, I can't get the video cranked up or the audio cranked up all the way, so you just have to listen really closely. But it's a short video just to give you an idea.
All right, let's play a little bit of a game here. Imagine you're shooting a film or video and you have a choice to make between really good video quality and really good audio quality. Which do you choose? You'd be surprised how many people actually choose really good video and how this could probably be to their detriment. We're going to show you two examples. First, really good audio but really terrible video. So you can see with really terrible video how you can follow what I'm saying, how you can get into the story despite the fact that the image has been degraded. Directors will use this creatively, like the Blair Witch Project, which is like an hour and a half of really terrible video, but the audio is so good, you can follow the story. Things change drastically when we switch that around. Suddenly, with really bad audio, it's hard to take what I'm doing seriously. It's hard to take this video seriously and to get through something like this in 5 minutes. This might work maybe with action cams if the content is really good, like skydive, but we kind of forget that for a second. But for actual film content, you can't pull this off. It's terrible and it's unwatchable. And it's only unwatchable because the audio is terrible. So I mean, first things not the benefit of all.
Okay, so there you can see, hopefully hear a little bit of how good audio and makes much more of a difference in good video. Also, a lot of the time too, when you're out, your smartphones don't have a very good mic on them. So when I go over gear, one of the first things you want to buy is a mic, and especially if you're outside, wind will be the #1 destroyer of good audio. Even if you have clear, good audio, if you got a really strong wind coming, there might not be nothing you can do except turn your body, turn the person, move them into some place where there's not a lot of wind. But wind is the #1 destroyer of any kind of audio because there's nothing you can do even in post-production to fix it, okay? But you can see there where bad video with good audio, we can still kind of forgive, but then I almost cringed when he snapped and turned it into clear video, but clear with really bad audio, because you just can't, kind of deal with that when that sensation's hitting your ears. Okay? So that's the importance of good audio versus good video. So now we're going to go on to before shooting. So these are a couple things you can do before you actually go to wherever you need to be to start your video. Do research. Now, obviously, you're going to be doing this already if you're going to be writing about the person. Sorry? No? Okay. You're going to be doing research already before on your subject or where you're going to be going before you meet them. So obviously, you can do research as well on visually as where they're going to be. So if they're going to be in an office or in a building or you're going to a specific factory, look up on Google Images, see what's there so you can make notes, you know, oh, okay, that looks like a great place, or the lobby looks like a perfect place to do a video interview rather than in his office, which could be just bland with, you know, office chairs and a very, you know, pale beige wall and things like that. So do some research to visually find a good place to do the interview and some B-roll, and which we'll get into that later. Arrive early and find a well-lit spot. Okay, so again, you're always going to arrive early anyway, just if you do your due diligence, but maybe you arrive 5 or 10 minutes earlier than what you normally would and say, hey, I know I'm a little bit early, but I would just like to walk around and scout out, you know, a good vantage point to do the interview in. So that way you can walk around, you can find a nice place, I mean, it's well lit. If you can avoid using the office lights, that'll be, but you know, sunlight's generally better. Indirect sunlight, meaning shade or reflecting off a wall, is even better than direct sunlight. But if you're stuck in an office with fluorescent tungsten lighting, there's nothing you can do about that. A few things about the light. Okay, and I'll have a diagram later on. It should be bright, like I was just saying. It should be preferably from the side, 45-degree angle. And when you'll see in a diagram, and I have examples of what that kind of light looks like, but basically off to your left or off to your right, okay, if you are facing the subject. And it should be the same color source. I have an image where you can see there's 2 color sources. You might have taken pictures like that where you'll get one that's, one part of the image is like really yellow, the other part's really like blue or like cool blue, and you'll get into color sources a little bit of like that. A simple setup is you in the center, as you can see, and either the camera or the light to your right or to your left. Okay, so you should always be between your camera and your light. If you don't have a light, that's okay, but just remember that your camera should be to the left or to the right of you, and you should be facing your subject. And don't be afraid to move things, okay? If the seat's not right, if the light's not at a good 45, maybe it's at a 90 or behind the subject, rotate the seat, okay? You got to take over. You're the director, you're the producer, this is your video, you got to make it look the best you can. Rotate the chair, rotate your chair, move stuff completely to a different room. If it's too loud, you know, find a quieter place down the hallway. Generally, most people are, you know, fairly flexible with moving things around within a certain, you know, you don't want to like start having people lift sofas across the room and things like that. But if they're normal chairs or tables, you can rearrange and rotate them to get the best light possible. Questions? No? Okay. Just interrupt me anytime. Here, as you can see, is a typical positioning of the light. Okay, from starting from clockwise from the top left, you can see the direct light right in front of the source. And then the next one, the top middle, that's the 45-degree angle. Okay, that's the most pleasing light where you'll have some highlight and some shadow going across the subject's face. You go to the top right, you'll see that's a 90-degree angle. It's very dramatic, but normally not what you want for an interview. If you look at the bottom row.
Excuse me, Mitch. I don't think your slide advanced.
No. Okay. Hold on.
Oh, there we go. Yes. That.
It did. That one? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see that now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. It doesn't load sometimes. So the top left, again, the light very direct, very not so flattering, but if you have to do it, it's fine. Top middle is the 45-degree angle. Okay, that's the one you want to shoot for, where it's off to the left or to the right of the subject. Top right, 90-degree, starts to become very dramatic, but not necessarily good for the interview. The bottom ones where they're behind or down below, like if you remember the camp, you know, light flashlight, it's a dark and stormy night. That bottom middle one, you get that kind of scary effect, and then the light from directly behind. So none of those really good, but the top middle one, that 45-degree angle, is the one you want to shoot for. Do you see this next image of the room?
I think we're still on the 4 pictures. There we go. Yes.
That's right.
Oh, Mitch, I'm sorry. We do have one question. That's 45
Sure.
degrees from where? One of the panelists is not following the 45-degree mention, excuse me,
Okay.
and
I
wonders.
went back to this. Do you see the image with the woman and the 6? No, let me see.
Yes, there we do. Yes.
If you look at the top middle image, okay, it's a little, I don't know if I can blow this up. You can kind of see where I put her center. The little, to her right, there's that little gray circle, and you can see where the light is. Okay, so basically, a 45-degree angle is on the axis of you and your subject directly in front of you. So if you go 45 to the left or to the right, basically it's 90-degree would be a right angle, which would be this. Oh, sorry, this. 45-degree meaning basically, if you can see if that clarifies it, maybe about 2-3 steps to your right, facing them, or 2-3 steps to your left and facing from them. Just that angle is what I mean on the circumference of the little circle. That's what 45-degree means. So it's probably a little harder to see maybe on the screen, but this middle one is the ideal one. And again, it's just mostly within an arm's reach, maybe a little bit further than the arm's reach, from either side of you facing them. That's how you get the nice light line from left to right.
That makes sense. Thanks so much.
Yep. This next one, this is what we're calling 2 different color sources. You probably encountered this many different times when you have windows in office lighting or indoor lighting. So if you see on the left-hand side, there is a lot of yellow or warmer lighting from those fluorescent or tungstens in the kitchen. But on the right side, you can see from the daylight coming in from the windows, you have that green bluish type of color. That's something that you can adjust in post-processing, but it's too difficult, and it shows up even more dramatically on video. So if you're, and you can just do this by doing a test shoot or sticking your camera up and holding your camera up. You've seen this many a time. If you try to balance, right now this image is balanced for the left side or the kitchen, so that looks normal, but again, you get that green and blue cast on the right side. If you were to correct for the right side to make that normal, the left side would become very orangey yellow. So how do you fix that? Well, you only try to isolate one or the other color. So meaning you move them to the table, okay, where you get more of that outside light overpowering them, or you move them maybe to the countertop all the way deep in near the oven in the refrigerator on the left side, and you isolate them with most of that color, okay? So that's something you can easily see by taking a test shot while you're there. And if you have the mixed color, it's going to be a problem. You normally try to get them in one or the other. And that's what I mean by the color temperature. So basically, it's normally indoor versus outdoor lighting. And one is more warmer, one is more cooler. Do you see this diagram next? I'll just pull it out. And that's probably the easiest, I guess. So this diagram is a good way to get an indication of how you should set up. Again, if you just have the camera, that's fine. If you have a camera and one light, you'll see that you probably will never have 2 lights, so don't worry about the fill light on the triangle on the bottom right. But basically, like I said, you facing the person, okay, facing the interviewee, and you're always going to have one thing on your left and one thing on your right. So either the camera on the right side, like here in the diagram, and the key light or main light, or your main light source, which could be windows, it could be, office lighting. It doesn't matter what it is, but think about your light sources being on your left. You can reverse this, have your light source on your right, then put the camera on the left, but always keep you in the middle. All right, so the next slide, you have that during shooting. Okay. You want to run the camera during the interview, which is what we call the A-roll. So a lot of the times, at least when I started to write, when you're doing the interview, you have notes that you're taking, but you're also running an audio recorder, maybe as backup. Run your smartphone as well doing the video, okay? So that way you can not only have video of the interview, which you can splice later on, and that helps with your writing and vice versa, which you can go back, and see. But it also kind of creates redundancy where you have your audio recorder recording audio that can back up in case your microphone, for some reason, your phone kills out on you. And there's many different ways your phone can die, and I'll get into some of those, okay? Make sure you're in airplane mode. That's really important because you don't want notifications or text messages or calls coming in during the interview, because that's normally going to stop the recording and is going to add a bunch of extra things onto your video. And if you're not watching continuously because that camera's off to your left or right, if you're just by yourself, you can't always check to see if it's rolling. Okay, so make sure it's in airplane mode. Make sure you also have enough space. If you go into and you manage your space or you go into the video, it will normally give you an indication. Okay, if you record this at whatever settings you want, you'll have enough for, 20 minutes or 25 minutes or 45 minutes of video left. So that'll normally give you a good indication, because you don't want to stop during an interview and have to delete a bunch of apps or, upload stuff to the cloud. And, you're kind of destroying the flow, the rapport you have, and you're wasting time while you're doing that during the interview. You want to try pausing between questions and answers, okay? If the subject can do that as well, or you can answer questions and stop and wait 1 or 2 seconds before an answer. You can even tell them, if you can just take your time answering questions or give a pause between your question and answer, so that way you can cut on that dead air or dead audio between to make you a clean cut. Because if you're trying to blend things that are going overlapping, it's going to be hard to edit that later on. So try to pause between your questions and your answers. Be mindful of extraneous audio. Okay, if you yourself always like to agree with people, it's like, yeah, very good, yep, I understand, and that's going to be included on your video. Okay, and that's going to be very hard to edit it out later. If you like to, take notes and you're flipping, like I'm doing right now with my reporter notes, depending on where your audio is, that might hold up. Or if you have, a cup of coffee or something like that, or if you have a dress that's rubbing, or, you're making noise, clicking your pen, that stuff's gonna show up on your video as well, and it'll be hard to remove it. So just be mindful. HVAC, heaters, air conditioning, refrigerators running, people in the background, all of that noise can be picked up by your video. So be careful that don't put them next to something that might make noise or go off like every 15 minutes, and also tell them to put their phone, if they can, on airplane mode. Periodically check your equipment. Again, after about 5, maybe 2 or 3, 4 questions, 5, 10 minutes, tell them, can you hold on a second, I just need to check my gear. Get up, check your phone, make sure it's recording still, you're not having any problems with it, because sometimes it could overheat, could run out of room, something could just happen where it might cut. And if you go on a half-hour interview and you don't check it, you could have gone out after 2 minutes, and so you have 28 minutes of nothing that you didn't record. So periodically check your, after 2 or 3 questions, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that, just ask, get up, check your phone, make sure everything's going, no problem. When you're placing a person in the frame for the interview, and when you're kind of doing things, we'll follow the rule of thirds, and I have an image later on that'll kind of give you an idea. But basically, you divide your frame into 9 squares, and you place objects or people of importance on those lines. But again, I have a diagram a little later, and we'll talk about that. Take notes. So B-roll, it's almost similar to like the little things that you add into your story to give readers a better visual, understanding of the image. So, the person has a picture of, the kids on the desk, or there's a trophy, or there's some kind of hobbies that they have, or they have like a little twiddling again, paper clips, or they like, kind of sit in a weird position, things like that, where you're looking around as you're absorbing, you're doing the interview to add flavor to your writing. So that also makes for good B-roll. Okay, so you might not be able to shoot it then, but while you're making notes, saying, okay, get the shot of him and his 3 kids, or his trophy, or her, her pink ribbon, whatever, they kind of have around the office. Or if you're walking around, you're doing the interview, and he says, or she says that, oh, we just installed this new exercise room, as part of our, Get Healthy program. Make note of to go into the exercise room and shoot that, because then that way you can have the B-roll later on to your actual video. Shoot for the edit. What I mean by this is, this will come after more practice, but if you think about the video almost as like a complete piece before you actually shoot, you can shoot all your stuff for the edit. So again, when you make those notes, if those notes are in chronological order, And if you shoot your B-roll in the chronological order of taking those notes, you can just slap those B-rolls right on top of the interview, and you're basically done. Okay, so when you want to shoot for the final edit, because if you shoot things kind of out of order or mishapenly, but it'll happen. There'll be something maybe you'll see before you go to the interview, and you're like, oh, I need to get that now. So you'll shoot it now. But again, if you shoot for the primary edit, or when you're interviewing, it's like, oh, this is a good question. You make a note of that question, what's in that question, then you find B-roll after that, and you can drop it right in. So that way your video is kind of already completed in your head. You just need to find the stuff to fill it. And that's kind of like how I write as well, which could be right or wrong, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Questions? No?
None at this time, no.
Okay. Here's what I was talking about, a few things with the rule of thirds. You can see the grid lines going across. It's like horizontal tic-tac-toe. Okay. So they have the person perfectly lined up with that top left intersection, okay? And he's facing the right. And so you always want the interviewee facing the empty space. So if you looked at the setup, the interviewer is to the right, and so the camera's to the left. And if you look at the face, you can see there's actually two lights in this one. The main light, okay, is to the right of the interviewer. So if I take 3 steps, this is the camera view, right? So the interviewer is to the right because he's looking to the right off camera. Past the interviewer, again, is the light, because if you look at him, you can see there's a dark shadow under his chin on the left side. So the more powerful light is shining from right to left, okay? But if you also look at the back of his neck, past the shadow part, okay, by his ear, there's another light source off to the left. So that's the key light. So the main light is coming from right to left, and the key light's coming from left to right. If you don't have 2 lights, don't worry about it. But the idea is camera's facing him, he's facing the interviewer. So you're going camera, interviewer, and main light. Okay. One other thing of note is you can tell these are indoor lights. So the light sources are the main color temperature. If you look all the way to the back to those window lights, you can see they're that different color temperature, the more cooler, right? But because these lights overpower those lights in the background, they don't distract, or they're not as much of a bother because they're all the way in the back, because they're smaller, and because these lights overpower. So you can see even in this issue, they're having that problem with the 2 different light sources, but the indoor light overpowers the outdoor light. Question?
Yes, Mitch. There is a question from one of the members. They are asking, will you recommend a mic, lighting, and editing app for the iPhone?
We will get there. Yes, that's a very good question.
Okay, so it's coming up.
It's coming up. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Good question. We will get to that. No problems.
Oh, one other question. Is the person is asking, is the reporter holding the phone or using a tripod?
Most likely the reporter is using a tripod, okay? And we'll get to gear again later on, because it's almost impossible to, if you're writing, you have to concentrate on writing and taking notes. Your audio recorder can sit on the desk somewhere, but yeah, it takes a very good skilled person to do 3 things at once. I can't do that. Most likely whenever you see any kind of interviews, the phone is either on a monopod or a tripod, okay? And when we get to the gear, I'll show you, there's, again, with photography gear or any kind of gear, there's the $20 way and there's a $2,000 way. So I'll show you guys the $20 way to improve your shooting, but most likely, yes, they are on a tripod.
Okay, thanks.
And it doesn't even have to be a tripod. If you got duct tape, just duct tape it to a chair or a pole. You know, you don't always have to spend money if you got duct tape. But the idea is it's stabilized or still somewhere. But yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. All right. So after shooting, okay. So you've done the research, you've scouted the places, you've done the interview, you've got your B-roll, actually your A-roll with the interview. Now, after I shouldn't say after shooting, but after maybe the main interview, is to get the B-roll. This maybe should be included during the shooting, but anyway, B-roll is basically anything extra that will enhance the main story or the main interview. It's 3 to 5 seconds a clip with a 1 to 3 second buffer. So that means at most you should be clicking on and clicking off for 10 seconds. Okay. All you need, and you see, like if you looked at that Matt video, and at the end, if we have time, I'll show you a video I did on the iPhone. Most of your cuts, even when you watch the nightly news tonight, anything you'll see, most of the time, all your cuts, other than the main interview, is 3 seconds at most, maybe 5 if they really want to string it out. Sometimes they're even less, 1 or 2 seconds. So you want to record your main important part for 3 to 5 seconds with a 1 to 3 second buffer, meaning that way if you need to fudge the editing later on and you need to extend that 3 seconds to 5 or 6 seconds because you need to cover something else up, you'll have that buffer of, extra that you can roll over. Okay, but normally all you need is 3 to 5 seconds of an important event or idea or shot, and then that's it. You can turn it off. Again, like I was saying before, if possible, match the content to the interview. Okay, if they talk about something important, you can get a shot of that. A lot of the times, even if they're talking about stuff and you can't get access to that image, but if they're going to have a report or a pamphlet or a brochure, some kind of informative piece workout, or if the PR marketing person can email you photos and video, use their stuff as well, include it in there. So if they're talking, let's say, about the new, factory that's going out and you can't get to the site, but they'll have renderings, asking for the renderings, drop that in your video. Okay, so you can get materials from other things if you can't be there to shoot it. What we call wide, medium, and tight shots. Okay, so basically we call wide establishing shots that tries to encompass, to tell the person or give a sense of the space. So if you're interviewing somebody, like say at whatever Microsoft, you start maybe with a wide shot of the building, okay, with the Microsoft sign in the front. You go to a medium shot, you might get a medium shot of people walking into the building, okay, at the front doors. Tight shot could be people, at the front desk signing papers, or if you're talking about the interview with the CEO or something like that, get him walking down the halls. That would be a medium shot. Tight shot, I think, could be working at the desk. Okay, wide shot could be him, interacting with people in the cafeteria. But try to think about, again, you only have one lens generally on your phone, but you do have feet, okay? So move the phone back for a wider shot, or forward for a medium, and even more forward for a tight shot. But try to vary what you see through the viewfinder. But generally it goes wide, medium, tight. And then you only have wide generally every so often. Medium and tight, you can kind of interject or interact between each other. Medium generally is what the interview set up. So if we look back at the guy interviewing him, that shot of him from his waist to above his head with space on the right and left, I would consider that a medium shot. So that's what you want to shoot for the interview. And then intersperse medium and tight shots afterwards. Avoid panning, which just means moving the camera through a scene. If it's a very, very big, wide scene, or you need to show a lot of information, then it's okay. Try to limit panning, okay? And also try to limit rock shots. And what I mean by rock shots is something that's not moving, but you need to shoot it. So that photo of them, and his kids, that's a rock shot, but you need it. So click on it, shoot the frame for 3 or 5 seconds, stop, get off of it, okay? But if you need to shoot him at his desk, get him writing something or typing on the computer, get some kind of movement so there's not just a static, motionless image, because that's when people get bored the most, other than watching a talking head for 10, 15 minutes. Again, with B-roll, audio is still important because you can incorporate that underneath the main narrative or the interview where the person's talking, and that adds even more flavor and more depth to your video. Questions?
We do have a question from a member who asks, do you shoot the subject looking the same way the whole time during the whole interview, or do you record them looking in different angles or from different angles?
angles?
If generally just one, that's the easiest way. If you can do a 2-camera setup, that's even better. But I wouldn't worry too much about moving it because that adds in more possibilities of problems. When we get to the editing, if you're going to edit, if you're doing an interview and you're talking to a person for 30 minutes, you're not going to do a 30-minute video, okay? What you need to do, like with your writing, is you need to edit that 30-minute video down. Most people are not even going to sit through a 3-minute video, okay? Most of the videos I do now, unless they're more in-depth or more important, they're less than a minute, okay? So you get them talking about something important. So that way, if you just have the one view, it doesn't really matter because you're going to cover a lot of that interview up with the B-roll. That's why the B-roll is important. So I would just say for ease of use, just keep it at one angle, shoot that whole thing like that. If you want to move it to a different angle, you can, but you have to remember you're shifting everything over on your axis. So if they're looking at you and they're looking off to the right, and the other way they have to be looking off to the left, and you have to change the light. There's a lot of things that can kind of go wrong. Kudos if you want to try that, but one, just keep it simple. One generally is fine because they're not going to see a lot of that person for the most part. That's where the B-roll comes in.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Again, if you want to take it a next level, a lot of the times you'll see this too in interviews. If you have if you can do a 2-camera shot, you can do a medium and a tight at the same angle. Okay, so they're both looking, the camera's like right on top of one another or right next to each other, but one is only focused like really tight. You'll see on the face, like from the forehead to the chin, and the other one's that normal wide shot. If you can do that, because then you can cut to the tight shot if they're saying really important, it gives it more impact. But that requires 2 cameras, a lot more editing, probably more than what you're going to do. But that's the idea if you can do that. But yeah, keep it simple if you want to, and that'll be fine. All right. Now we're going to get into some apps and gear. So for shooting video, if you're on a smartphone, Filmic Pro. That's all you're going to need. That's the one app for shooting, at least. Okay, it's both for iOS and for Android. I think it is $12.99, but after you invest in it once, you'll never need another shooting app. And I can't get into the details. You can Google YouTube tutorials on how to use it. I'll just give a quick screenshot of what you can do. But that's all you will need as far as apps for shooting. Anything else you might want to, if you want to start creating storyboards or a shot list, or you want to have, one of those things that makes the snap, like, take one, you can get all that stuff later. But really all you need for shooting is Filmic Pro. It's a full control over your camera in your smartphone. For editing, I can only speak of iMovie for iOS. I don't use Android, but I've read reviews of Filmora Go. I believe Filmora Go is free. But again, these, you got to watch a tutorial, and basically it's kind of drag and drop. And a lot of, I think even the new iOS, I don't know about Android, it actually started building a movie without me asking it when I started shooting video once. So it kind of does a lot of the stuff for you. Whether or not it's any good is yet to be seen. But if you're going to be doing this on the iPad or your iPhone or your Android, that's pretty much all you need for editing. You just need one app for shooting and one app for editing. Okay. Most of the time for your movies, you're just going to need to cut clips, drop them in, and add some text and music. These will be fine for all that. Okay. You add a title. You introduce the name of the video. You introduce the person who's speaking. At the end, maybe put your credit. You may lay some video or some music underneath it, but other than that, it's just cutting the clips and adjusting the audio, and all those do that, and for free. Okay. For gear, now in the order of importance, and I'll have pictures so you'll understand what these are later on, is a lavalier mic and a tripod. Lavalier mic is those little things you see people will pin to their cuffs or, shirts right by the button, right below the chin when they're talking. A lot of TV personalities when you have interviews, you see them click that little thing on there with a little mic. That's a lavalier mic. $10 will get you one that works. $30 will get you a nice quality one. Okay. Tripod, like somebody was saying earlier, do they need a tripod? Yes, and there's actually a special adapter for a smartphone, which I'll also show you. You can, since the smartphone is so light, okay, you don't need an expensive tripod. 20 bucks, 30 bucks will get you one that'll work, that'll go as high as you need it to go. Again, you can spend 2 or 3,000 if you want, but 20 or 30 bucks will do fine. I'll get into a rig later, but that's what is basically what it is, where you mount the phone and you can mount a lot of other things. It's kind of like a cage around your phone that allows you to add extra things onto your phone, as far as like a mic, a light, and all that stuff. And then a shotgun mic or a light are the next two things that go with the rig. Shotgun mic is different from the lavalier mic, where this looks kind of like it's a longer, fuzzier, looks not like a shotgun, but almost like a little pistol. And what that does is, if you're far away and you can't put somebody on a lavalier mic like in an interview, but if you're walking around and you need to grab clearer audio from something that's 3 to 7 feet away, that shotgun mic is just like a focused mic. So it'll grab things that are directly in front of it clearer, and stuff that's around it, it will try to mute. Okay, so that's the idea of a shotgun mic. And then a light. Again, they started at 40 bucks. Good ones can run 80 or 100 bucks. The one thing you might want to spend money on, and it'll probably be the most money you'd ever spend, is a gimbal. And I'll show you what a gimbal does a little bit. But if you do a lot of running and gunning, or you're moving around with your smartphone, gimbal will help smooth your video out tremendously. If you're just doing an interview and you're hand holding 3 to 5 second shots, you don't need to run around or move around a lot, then you won't ever need a gimbal. Now I'm going to show you pics of all this. So any questions before we go on?
Yes, there is a couple of questions here, Mitch. One member asks, she says, I have access to DSLR and a smaller size video camera at work, but it has been a few years since I use this type of camera regularly. Are there online instructions or YouTube videos you would recommend to learn about or practice how to quickly adjust white balance, iris, and other settings?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is. I can put, if you just do a quick shooting video on your DSLR search, it'll be, like that. But I mean, there's not much, like all the stuff, like I said, I've taught, it'll pretty much be the same with the DSLR. You might just have to push more buttons, but I don't have anything off the top of my head. If you want long, in-depth training videos, like lynda.com has a lot of, but I think those are more paid. But with YouTube now, I would just Google shooting video with your DSLR.
And you mentioned Blenda.com. Blenda.com. Could you spell that?
Lynda.
Oh, Lynda.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Lynda.com.
Yeah. And I think there's like creativelive.com.
Creativelive.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of their webinars are like this, where they're streamed for free, and then you can go back and access them for a paid site later on. But YouTube, I mean, like, again, if you just need to turn it on and get the buttons controlled right, YouTube will probably take care of most of what you want. But
Okay.
when I first started video 5 or 6 years ago, I went through, when I didn't have any classes and when I had to self-teach myself everything. Lynda was really great, but it does cost money.
Okay. And one other question we have here from a member who asks, she says, you've mentioned laying music down a few times. Do you mean original music, public domain? Where do you suggest finding music?
Yeah, again, music, if you just Google royalty-free music, that'll take you to a bunch of sites you can use. Depending on if you're working freelance, then you might not have it. But I know, like my paper, we have an account with, I think, one of the music stores, But you Google royalty music, and there's a lot of stuff you can get out there for free. I even know, like, if you really want some slick stuff, Moby, he has open sourced all his generic music files for free to use, as long as you give, I think it was for Creative Commons. So, but yeah, there's a lot of free music sources out there. If you want the specific image or songs you want, depending on, if you just tell them for normal licensing for YouTube, and I think it goes by hits. So if you're not getting a lot of hits, you're probably at most going to pay $5 or $10 for something you might really want. But you do got to be careful with that. Even with fair use, if you're recording something and there's a famous song playing in the background, YouTube might block it, okay, because they can pick up somehow. If you've ever used Shazam, they can pick it. There's something embedded in the music which will allow them to identify the copyright owner. But again, a quick Google of royalty-free music, and there's a lot of places where you can get stuff for free.
So Googling royalty-free music, and you said Moby, is that M-O-B-Y?
Yeah, he's an artist. If you're not sure,
Okay.
he's just like a dance art, or I don't know. I don't even know what kind of genre his music is, but yeah, he has a lot of really slick hip hop. Like iPhone commercials, that kind of music you can get from Moby, and it's all free from his side. I think if you just use it for, I don't know if it could be just for educational purposes, but they don't normally check.
Okay.
You didn't hear that from me, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all the questions we have right now.
Sure. So this, getting a little short. Okay, I'll run through this quickly. This is the Filmic Pro app. I'm not going to get to all the signs, and there's a lot of buttons here, but again, once you look at the tutorial, it's not that hard. The main thing about this is it allows you to control your exposure and your focus, meaning these two big square and circle that allows you to move it around the screen. So I'm sure there's a lot of times if you're using your camera and you'll see like that square will kind of pop up every couple seconds, and it'll adjust, or it'll kind of go out of focus and like back and forth, in focus, out of focus. That's the camera kind of auto doing everything, and a lot of times it's not going to hit correctly. This allows you, all it does is take all the automatic controls and turns them into manual. So you now have full control over your camera, not the computer. And so that's good, but you can see, again, you can set the focus with the big red square there, or the exposure. It's got the big red button at the bottom. Same thing, you got the zoom on the right-hand side. It shows your battery life and your space at the bottom, so you know if you're running out of memory or if your battery's about to die. There's a lot of different things you can use. You can adjust the color balance here as well. So you can set the right color balance if you want it warmer or cooler, depending on where you are. It just gives you much more control over what you're shooting compared to the app, the built-in app of your phone, okay? So it's one-time investment, and that's all you'll ever need for shooting. Can you see it? Just pull it out. So here, again, tripod on Amazon is $20.99. But significance, if you already have the tripod, is if you look where the red arrow is, kind of like a little bit off center, pointing to that little doohickey up there, that's what you need to mount your smartphone onto a tripod you already have. So this setup for $20.99 has all that already. It's even got a little remote in a bag to shoot that. So this was just something I got off of Amazon to show you how cheap it is. But if you already have a tripod, that little doohickey, which if you just search for, I believe, iPhone holder for tripod, that'll pop up, okay? And it's just a little secure thing that you can screw onto the top and hold your iPhone up there. Just keep going that way easier so you can see. This is what I was talking about with the rig, okay? It allows you to put your cell phone in there, and it allows you with the two hands to make your video more steady, because if you're using two hands away, that stabilizes the phone a little bit. And if you want to, you can add a light, and that mic up there, you can see it. That's what they call a shotgun mic, okay? It's very directional. It's taking most of the sound from what's in front of it and disregarding the sound to the side of it. Again, this one's only $12.98, okay? So it's not that expensive. Here is that gimbal, okay? Let's disregard this one on the right, the vertical video, no. But the two on the left is fine. You can see what it just basically does is gives you smoother video, and I actually have an example of that. If you want to get full-blown crazy, this will probably be the biggest setup you'll ever need. You have the gimbal, you have the light, you have the shotgun mic, all in one setup. This is like, I guess, the luxury package of video interviewee developer, whatever stuff. That probably everything there is going to be around $200 to $250. I just want to show you real quick this video. You don't need the sound, but you can see how the difference of this is a handheld video, and the next one will be a gimbal. So you can see going through the same motions how much smoother it is going up all the way up the stairs, running around fairly fast. Again, this is handheld. This is with that gimbal. Okay. Smooth, really, really smooth. So again, if you do this kind of video where you're walking around a lot, okay, you can see it pulling around, switching. The one on the right side, the gimbal, makes everything much more smoother. Okay. Best one was that DJI Osmos. It's 139. You can probably get a Chinese knockoff for about 89 bucks. Okay. So that's the advantage of the gimbal. We're not too much time left. I'm going to see if I can get into editing real quick. Any questions beforehand?
No questions right now.
Okay. If there's anybody want to ask, depending on how much longer you can stay, you might want to get them ready because I think I only have 1 or 2 more slides and then we'll be good. All right. So editing, again, like I said, editing is almost, if not more important than shooting video. When you're editing, these are only very broad strokes. I can do an entire webinar on just editing, but we don't have time. So you're going to get the 3-minute mix. For editing, you lay down your A-roll and you edit for the narrative. Okay. So you lay down your interview with what you're doing and you edit that first. Don't worry about B-roll. Okay. Just edit for the narrative, for the story, for the most important parts. When you think you're done, cut more and then cut again. You should be cutting, if you have a half-hour interview, okay, after your first edit, you should be able to get it down to about 10 minutes. Your second edit, you should be able to get down to 5 minutes. Third edit, get down to 3 or 2 minutes. Then if you can, maybe down to a minute, okay? You can do 3 minutes, but again, you'll learn after practice and doing what's important, what's not. But whenever you think you're done, you can always cut more, okay? Make it more concise. If you can, cut out fillers. And what are fillers? Well, you know, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. What I just said, well, you know, or they drop something, all that little space, an for a 5-second display, that can be cut 10 seconds down into 2, okay? So if you can cut out all the fillers, that actually kills, or I should say, consumes a lot of the time during the video. Group A and B roll into chunks. And what I mean is, normally when you're doing the video, you start right out with the interviewer, drop down their title, and let them talk for 20, 30, maybe even 15, 20 seconds, depending on how long it is. Then you drop B-roll for 15 to 20. Then you go back to the interviewer for another 15 to 20. Then you go back to B-roll for another 15 to 20, and you're done, okay? If you're doing a 3-minute one, then you normally do 20 to 30 seconds of interviewer and B-roll. You just transition back and forth, okay? There's something really important that you want to say, then you have them watch the person while they're saying that important part, and then you can cut the B-roll. But you want to group them into chunks. Generally, there's a minute video, 10 to 15 seconds, you go back and forth. There's a 2 to 3 minute video, maybe 20 seconds to 30 seconds each, but you just alternate back and forth. Group them into chunks. So that A-roll, it'll be 20 to 30 seconds of them just talking. Then with the B-roll, you might have 5 or 6 clips that are 3 to 5 seconds long. Okay, and you just group that together like that. You use B-roll to enhance the story. Okay, like I said, match the content. We're talking about, you know, the developing of the new site. You show a plan of the new site or a rendering of the new site. To fill space, okay, if you just need to extend, you don't want to, you know, the person's talking for maybe only 30 seconds and you need to extend it to a minute, you just have them talk a little bit at the beginning and you just drop a lot of B-roll. And then you finish it off with them at the end. Okay, you can use it to fill space, extend it out, and cover the person talking. And the last one is to cover errors. So if you have that pause or that shuffle or something, you know, gets put into the video that you didn't want to, drop a B-roll over, okay? Because that'll kind of, when you do that, you're kind of telling the viewer squirrel, you know, you're kind of distracting them from what's going on with the audio in the main one because they're looking at something, and then you can kind of cut back to whatever was going on that's important. Questions? No.
No more questions right now. So,
are we done, or do I keep going? Or
are you finished with your slides, or was there any more?
I have one more.
Okay, well, it's fine to go ahead and finish the slide if you'd like. Or
Yeah. So again, then the last cut on action, meaning if you can cut on them walking or talking, or even the interviewer if they're making a gesture, when they're swinging their hands or scratching them, their face, or doing something, with their hands, cut on that action. Okay, it'll make the transition to whatever else you're going into easier. When in doubt, cover it up, meaning if you're not sure if this is a good piece or it's shaky, it's not shaky enough, they're not really talking about something, cover it up with B-roll. When you're adding your B-roll and that natural sound of the B-roll over the interview, now that you have two competing audio, because when you put B-roll over A-roll, you have the interviewer and the sound of whatever going on the B-roll competing with each other. You want to lower that sound of the B-roll to 20%. So you still hear it, but it's in the background and the narration of the story comes through. And you want to listen without watching. So when you're kind of done with your edit of your A-roll, close your eyes, listen to what they're saying, okay? So you don't have any other visual distractions of B-roll, whatever else is going on. So that way you can really hear and say, if there's a flow, and then you're like, okay, this one piece, what he's saying, it doesn't make sense here, I should move it, or I can just cut it out altogether. So try to listen without watching the video so you don't have that extra distraction. Take time away. If you have time, if you're not on deadline, cut the video, finish it, and wait a week, go back to it. See if there's something you can maybe clean up or you didn't see. Because when you're looking at the same video, if you do an edit, you're going to look at the same video. You might even look at the same 3-second B-roll again over and over for like 10, 15 times. It starts to get kind of mundane, okay? Finished is good. Shut up. Sorry, I'm talking to my cat. Yeah. Finished is good. If you're finished, you're finished. That's it. Don't worry about having to keep going back. If you can do it back that one time is great. But if you're done, if it's cut, then it's done. You don't have to worry about it. Or else you'll kind of get into this editing vortex where you keep wanting to do something more, and it won't be productive. Okay, so finished is good. The last one is I'm going to say edit like you write. Okay. When I started to learn writing, I was really scared, but then I kind of realized I almost write like I edit. Now that might not be good, but I get all my thoughts down, okay, and I chunk it up into different, sections, how you would, but if you're writing for a newspaper, magazine's a little bit different. But you get all your thoughts down, and then you kind of rearrange it. Okay, so like these two pieces kind of go maybe up at the front. And then so you organize it after you've gotten most of your stuff written. And then you pull out the quotes and the little scene sections or the interesting parts and add that in for flavor in between what you've already written. Editing is kind of like that. You can listen for the interview, pull out the important parts, reorganize it how you want to tell the story, and then you add all the B-roll in afterwards. Okay, now I don't know if that's how I should write, but it seems to work right for me, and my professor didn't mind. So that's kind of like the one thing where, you get a basis, you just kind of write everything down. Here, you just drop everything on the timeline, cut out all the fat, organize it into a coherent story like you want to do, and then you just add the B-roll on top of it. Okay, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. We did have a couple of questions that came in just in the last couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, is your slide deck available for sharing? One of our members missed the last 2 slides.
Yeah, I can turn this into a PDF and I'll email it to you, so then you can.
Okay. Yes, and we can share that with the group.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like 120 megabytes, so I think if I go to PDF, it'll shrink it down a lot. So.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of questions. One member asks, what about using text in a video, like a text slide, for example? Are there rules for this? When should it be used? When should it be not used? This text approach.
You're not talking about adding text like the Brad Smith, CEO of Microsoft. You're talking about like an actual text report, like a piece of paper with text on it.
I think it means using words to kind of reinforce the video.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine if you don't want to have them compete. So if there's nobody talking, and if you just have the natural sound of like a B-roll, then you can add text. You just don't want to add text over talking, right? Because then they're going to for your interest. But yeah, a lot of the times when I do the videos too, I'm by myself and there's no reporter. But what I'll do is, if the reporter writes a story, I'll just take 3 or 4 sentences out of that story, and re-edit it and add it to the video. So then that gives it some context. Because sometimes, again, if you don't have anybody, you need to, if you're doing a story about, a new site or a new building going up, there might not be anybody out there. You might be shooting an empty lot or stuff like that, but you might have other things. So yeah, for sure you can add text. There's no right or wrong. I'd keep it to 1 line that you can stretch with maybe 1 sentence per 2 or 3 video. You'll kind of know by reading it if you read it, you'll see, okay, this is too short, before you go to the next one. There's no real rule of thumb, but I think for, 1 sentence, it takes probably 5 to 7 seconds. So you might have the text over like 2 or 3 B-roll, right? Or if you do that slow pan, maybe that I told you shouldn't do, you can put text over that slow 5 to 7 second pan, and that way they can read and absorb. Because if you're just listening, that's kind of automatic, and you can kind of watch what you're seeing, and the audio enhances. But when you're reading, you have to split your time between reading and watching the video. So you want to keep the text shorter to the point, and not try to change the video too much, as far as content-wise, so that way it doesn't confuse them. But no, it's acceptable. People do that. Yeah, you can do that all the time.
Okay, great. And we do have another one here if you have just a minute, Mitch. A member asked, does the content of the video need to repeat the content of the story, or is it better used, or are videos better used to enhance content? Can a video function as a sidebar and explain a detail not explained in a story? If a story is about a business, for example, could the video show how the business makes their signature product so that it doesn't have to be fully explained and take up room in your story? Basically asking how videos, do they work kind of as a duplication of a story, or can they enhance it or further explain certain sidebar aspects?
Yeah, for sure. That's actually a really good question and a good idea. It depends on what you're doing, because a lot of the times, at least when I'm shooting video, my video is, well, I don't know really why my video is there, because we never get any clicks, but they want us to do video, so I do video. But yeah, if you had the idea is generally, the video can tell the story a different way. So if you have something, yes, I would say the short answer is yes. I'm trying to think about it next. They're giving a good example where if you're talking, let's say about somebody. I'm trying to think of a story. There was recently something. I think there was a New York Times where it had interactive graphics and video, and the story was about this avalanche. But then, the side video interviewed the people directly. It just had that. It had nothing to do with the actual avalanche or the accident. So yes, that's a great way to do it. If you have time, and if you can organize it that way, that's probably even better. But most of the time, mine are just for people who don't want to read through, a story. They click on the video or something. The video for me, or for at least where I work, it's just something to grab people's attention and to add to the interactive newspaper. So we have an e-paper, right? So when they're looking through the e-paper, they can just click on it and watch the video rather than read the story. So the content generally has to be the same or similar to what the story content is about. But no, using video and graphics, just like with anything to enhance the story, is a great idea if it comes at it from a different angle. That's a really good question. Yes,
okay.
It should be done, to do something like that.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have at this time, Mitch. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your time and for sharing your expertise with this group on behalf of SABEW. Sincerely, thank you. We're glad that you could spend an hour or so with us today. And also thank you to our member participants today. We really appreciate your participation and your questions, and lots of great questions. Really, it's been a fascinating hour. So thank you to the members, and thank you especially to Mitch. We really appreciate it.
Sure. And if there's any other questions they might have, feel free to wrap them up, send them over my way. And like I said, I'll PDF you, and also some video links for maybe what were we talking about? The video links for, I guess, using the app,
yes,
and some editing tutorials or something like that. Or using the DSLR as well. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Yep, I'll go ahead and get those links together too. But yeah, great. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much. And I guess that concludes today's program. If you have any future ideas about topics you'd like us to cover, members, just email us at sabew@sabew.org. Otherwise, that concludes today's session. Thanks, everyone.